Mistake number 1, treating the plan like a to-do list. One of the most common traps is approaching the birth plan as a rigid checklist, almost like a wedding itinerary. Everything is thought out, scripted, and timed. While planning can feel reassuring, this approach can set you up for emotional distress if labor veers off course, and most labors do in some way. People often internalize deviations from their plan as personal failures, which can leave emotional scars long after the baby arrives. Birth is unpredictable. Even the most beautifully written plan won't account for every curveball. If your cervix doesn't dilate on schedule, or if the epidural becomes necessary after hours of unmedicated labor, it doesn't mean you failed. It means your body and your baby are doing something unique, and your job is to respond with love, flexibility, and informed choice. To avoid the common mistake of treating your birth plan like a to-do list, focus on birth preferences rather than a fixed plan. Use language like I prefer or if possible instead of absolutes like I will or I won't. This subtle shift helps you stay anchored in your values without becoming attached to a specific sequence of events. It also gives your medical team room to collaborate with you in real time, not just follow instructions from a static document. Mistake number 2, using the plan to avoid what scares you. Some people use the plan to declare what they don't want. While it's important to know what you hope to avoid, this strategy can sometimes come from a place of unprocessed fear. Instead of working through anxiety, the plan becomes a form of denial. Like if it's on paper, it won't happen. But unacknowledged fear doesn't disappear. It often surfaces in labor when your thinking brain goes offline and your body is flooded with adrenaline. That's when you might feel panic, freeze, or feel like you're spiraling if something you swore wouldn't happen becomes necessary. And in those moments, you'll need coping tools and a mindset that can hold space for the unexpected, not just a plan that says no. Instead of avoiding your fears, get curious about them. Why does the thought of an IV or a C-section bother you? What past experiences or stories are influencing that fear? Working with a prenatal coach, doula, or trauma-informed provider can help you unpack those layers and make peace with possibilities you hope to avoid. You may still list your preferences, but you'll do it from a place of clarity, not panic. Mistake number 3, assuming the medical team will just follow it. Some people hand over their birth plan expecting it to be followed like a Starbucks order. But birth is not a transaction. It's a dynamic, collaborative event. Your provider isn't fulfilling an order. They're a clinical decision maker with their own training, concerns, and constraints. The assumption that your birth plan will be followed to the letter can lead to deep disappointment. You may feel dismissed or blindsided if a provider recommends something that's against the plan. It also doesn't account for team-based care. Your provider may not be the one on call, and nurses, midwives, and residents may all play a role in your care. The fix? Treat your plan as a conversation starter. Bring it to a prenatal visit and say, I'd love to talk through some of my birth preferences with you. Ask open-ended questions like, how do you typically approach X, Y, or Z? Or what would make this plan more workable from your perspective? That way your team becomes a part of the process. This will also help you practice having a conversation about your preferences in a relaxed environment, so that if you have to have a similar conversation when the pressure is high, you already feel comfortable doing so. Mistake number 4, skipping the plan entirely and just trusting your provider or doula. On the flip side, some people go in the opposite direction. They don't make a birth plan at all. Maybe they feel overwhelmed, or maybe they really like their provider and just want to go with the flow. And while trusting your provider is important, blind trust can be risky, especially if you haven't had clear conversations about your values, communication preferences, or how decisions will be made during labor. Equally risky is expecting your doula to be your voice. Your doula is there to support you emotionally and physically, not speak for you. And most importantly, your doula isn't you. You're the one who built the relationship with your provider. You are the one who gets to ask the questions, express your needs, and make decisions. When a doula takes over that role, it can actually create confusion or even concern within your birth team. It may give the impression that you're not capable of advocating for yourself, or worse, that you're being pressured into choices that aren't your own. Without preparation, it's easy to freeze in the moment. You might nod along or agree to something you didn't fully understand just to keep things moving. And that's how birth trauma can happen. Not necessarily because something went medically wrong, but because you felt powerless or like things were being done to you and not with you. To avoid that, Focus on building informed trust, not passive trust. Ask your provider how they typically handle common interventions. Talk to them about how they communicate in high-pressure situations. Use a birth plan not as a script, but as a tool to share your values and start those conversations early. Birth will always hold some surprises, but when you're mentally and emotionally prepared, you're more likely to feel grounded, respected, and fully present no matter how things unfold. Mistake number 5. Letting the plan replace communication. It's easy to assume that a birth plan will just speak for itself. But the truth is, handing over a sheet of paper and expecting your birth team to read and know how to follow it, especially during a busy shift, isn't really realistic. If you haven't talked through what's on the plan, ideally before labor begins, it can actually hurt communication instead of helping it. For example, a nurse might skim your plan and assume that if you're experiencing a lot of pain and you wrote no cervical checks, they may avoid offering one, even if knowing your dilation or the baby's position could really be helpful in the moment. Or they might misunderstand a bullet point because there's no context. And when things are moving quickly, misinterpretation can lead to missed opportunities for care that aligns with your true preferences. To avoid this, think of your birth plan as a living tool, not a final set of instructions. Share it early with your provider so you can talk through it together. Review it with your birth coach, support person, or doula, and practice how you'll talk about your preferences in real time. Think of it as less of a handout and more like talking points that you learn to speak from. That way, you're not just handing over your wishes, you're owning them. When used this way, your plan becomes a bridge to better communication, not a wall that shuts it down. So now that we've talked about how to use the birth plan the right way, as a living, flexible communication tool, you might be wondering, but what about all the things I can't plan for? That's where your birth vision comes in.